Welcome to the EMOlition Derby podcast. I'm your host, Alessandro, and I'm a huge music nerd. I've been playing in bands for well over a decade, but have since gone on to become a music journalist working for several notable outlets, including alternative press. As a journalist, I cover a wide range of stories within music, culture, fashion, and just about everything else. However, I would say that first and foremost, I'm an alternative and emo historian and want to use this podcast as a means to connect with artists, musicians, and creatives to get the answers that I've always wanted and have an open forum to discuss fascinating stories within our special underground community. We release one episode per week that will either be long-form interviews with myself and a host of brilliant artists and figures from prominent acts across a wide range of genres, as well as other episodes where I sit down with my closest friends and co-producers, Joe Giordano and Ethan Fuller, to have what we call roundtable discussions. For those episodes, expect nerdy deep dives on music, as well as our fair share of hot takes and fiery debates. Whether we are sitting down with your favorite artists or just having fun between the three of us, EMOlition Derby is a must-listen podcast for all things alternative, emo, and beyond. Hey, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Going well. Thank you so much for jumping on. For the listeners, I'm with Trevor Hedges of Sundressed, Phoenix, Arizona-based indie punk band. I think that's a good category to put you guys.
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
for sure. So my first question was sort of, are you born and raised in like the Arizona area, like Phoenix area?
I kind of say I was. I was actually born in Southern California and lived like outside LA till I was like 9 or 10.
So like your formative years.
Exactly, yeah. Like all my memories of starting bands and all that stuff and skateboarding. And
I definitely want to touch on the more, the things that you've been so candid about, like lyrically and just everything that you put out in the world. But before we kind of touch on those more like really deep and personal topics, I just want to first kind of just pick your brain and see like, what was Trevor like as a kid, like discovering music? Like what was like some of those first bands that really resonated with you when you started writing songs as well? Like when did you first start to realize that songwriting was like this form of catharsis and like the thing that you were really good at,
Totally. I have like a really good pinpointing story about this actually. So, because I always connected like when I was like 11, 12, I got into skateboarding and I loved like punk bands and the energy of punk bands. And like, so all my playlists would be like Jamie Thomas's part from the Zero video, track 1, stuff like that. And I was in a Spanish class and we had to do a report in Spanish on our favorite band. And I think I did Rancid or something at the time. And this kid, Ben, who is still my friend today, did Bright Eyes, and he played a Bright Eyes song. And that was the first time I had ever connected to a song lyrically, like, because I was a sad, anxious kid and I didn't really have a lot of education or understanding about mental health. So connecting to a lyric was just like, oh my God, music can make me feel this way. I don't even know this guy, and he's singing a song about my brain. You know what I mean? And that was kind of what really made me fall in love with writing lyrics. And from then on, I just kind of like took a deep dive down into like Saddle Creek records and got more into the like kind of emo side of pop punk. Like I loved like Saves the Day, Motion City Soundtrack, American Football, like a lot of bands in that era. And ever since then, I've just always connected to like writing lyrics and connecting with people that way.
That's so cool to hear. I mean, I can definitely, now that you say it, I can hear the Bright Eyes elements.
So everyone always says when I mention it.
It's like you don't initially think it, but then once you say, okay, that makes a ton of sense. And then I also hear, like you mentioned Saves the Day, and like I kind of heard some, it's kind of an unpopular opinion, but like my favorite Saves the Day record is In Reverie.
Heck yeah. It's a good record.
I hear those elements like in some of your songs, like it's super cool, like where it's like kind of when Saves the Day, we're kind of like sort of treading that like Weezer line a little bit, where they were kind of going like the more like alt radio sound. Like I think it worked really well for that band, but now the fans love it. But
right.
So that's really cool. So like, by the time you're discovering music, so you're like starting bands in high school and everything like that, doing the thing. And obviously, was that in like the Phoenix area then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That was fertile ground for so much great music.
totally.
And then what era would that have been? Like what years would that have been?
So I graduated in 2005. I never really got a band going until much later. I've been pretty candid in interviews, but I had a pretty bad substance abuse problem throughout high school and my early 20s. So I was always into music, but never really had it together to like really do it full time, you know? But yeah, everyone around me was like, the Maine was blowing up, Somerset, Bless the Fall, The Word Alive, like pretty much every band that started in Arizona was like on Warp the next year. It felt like it was crazy at that time.
And not to mention, you've now played like 8123 Fest.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We get our merch printed through the Maine guys. They have a merch company out here now.
I've worked very close to them. My first ever AP cover story was with the band.
That's so sick. I love that band. I have so much respect for them. They're so good to their fans and just a great people altogether.
They're just a model of like what a band should aspire to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like you mentioned, some of those harder times, like in your upbringing, like with substance abuse problems, and you've spoken very candidly about this project sort of being your push towards sobriety and keeping you on this like creative path and everything. What was sort of your headspace like at the time? Like, I guess from like an outsider's perspective, I'm imagining like, maybe you started to get clean and then have this moment of clarity where you're like, okay, my eyes are kind of open now. I need to dive into this. Like what sort of led up to that point, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of like the last year when I was using, I was addicted to heroin. So I got like pretty bad, pretty quick, kind of thankfully and not thankfully. I'm thankful that I was able to get clean at 22 and get better. But I had recently like gotten really into like songwriting and I ended up in a treatment center for 6 months. And it was kind of a like, my dad dropped me off and was like, this is your last chance sort of thing. And he ended up bringing one of my guitars and I had so much extra time. I started writing songs and kind of really connected to how healing that could be and started picturing like, what are the things I always wanted to do that drugs were keeping me from? And it was like, start a band, go do this. So it was my thought was like, once I actually got clean and I had like a year or two and I had to deal with some like court stuff, but I was like, while I'm dealing with this, I'm going to start the band. If it takes off, cool. If it doesn't, then I will go back to school and figure something out. And since then, I've just still been doing the band. It gets just that much better every year and we just keep going. So here we are.
I mean, that's amazing. It feels like, yeah, like such like a second lease on life. Like, that's just so cool. Like,
yeah, it's kind of like, that's really kind of how I looked at it. It was like, I didn't really get to be a kid and be a teenager. I was, doing very adult things that I shouldn't have been and was very dark and sad time for me. So, really starting the band and getting in the van was like being 18 again, but I was like 25, 26 at the time,
Sure. I mean, congrats on your sobriety and everything. I mean, that's so huge. And,
Thank you.
So commendable how honest and forthright you are about it, because I'm sure how much that helps others as well, like sharing your story, like on any level, and that was sort of my next question was like, obviously because your music is so vulnerable and so candid, like, have you had instances like over the years that have really stuck out to you where fans have reached out letting you know like that your music has helped them in a certain way? Like, what is that emotional payoff like?
Yeah, totally. I've definitely had a lot of moments where people have come up to me and been like, like I heard your story. I have, 30 days sober, 6 months sober. And I get to just like kind of have a conversation with them about how I felt at that time in my sobriety and like what works for me. And that's very therapeutic for me. A lot of things I learned in recovery are all about kind of giving back and sharing your story. And I'm not really the type of person that can go stand in front of a big crowd and talk and tell my story. eloquently, but I can put it into a song for sure. And that's kind of how I've approached like my writing and kind of sharing my message and telling my story is like, this is my unique way of giving back and like showing that evidence that you can get past it, you know?
Absolutely. And this is a question I've asked a lot of artists that, have spoken candidly about, their background, like, with addiction and whatnot, and being really vulnerable. Like, does it ever feel like a sacrifice sometimes to put so much of yourself out there, or is it just second nature at this point? But was there ever a moment where you're like, damn, like this is so much to put out there? Like, does it ever feel like a sacrifice that you have to be that vulnerable?
Yeah, I have had moments where like, like maybe there's something heavy going on back home in my own life and like, it's just a little too much, just overbearing. Like I remember specifically having a group of two parents come up to me and tell me that they had lost their kid from addiction. And it was like 6 months into a tour. And I was just like, this means so much to me. Like, thank you so much for sharing this. And I can completely relate, but please like send me a DM. Like, let's talk more about this when it's not like a loud show. I'd always try to be kind and just be myself, whether I'm on stage or off stage, and just, like everyone has their panic moments and their mental health days. And I think people are pretty understanding for the most part. But, if it's an especially tough day for me mentally, I might not add that bit on stage, where I share that specific invitation to come talk to me,
Of course. Yeah.
But overall 95% of the time it is more rewarding and so worth it and helps me stay sober and is such a big deal to me. So
man, that's so incredible, man. That's
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads us to like, Bad Drugs kind of being the focus single right now. And I mean, that song is just, it's fucking awesome. And
thank you.
There's a couple of different things I want to unpack about this song. So, the first thing I want to talk about is sort of like medication in general, if you don't mind. I think there can be stigmas, there can be, taboo things surrounding that and therapy alone as well too. Like, and I love the BetterHelp scene in the music video. It's incredible. And talking about like that, with like medication and whatnot in therapy, like sort of what that process has been like, and sort of your views on all of that, I guess, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. So when I first got clean, I was like so dead convinced that it was the substances and my substance abuse that was contributing to my anxiety and depression. And I really did not seek any mental health help for a long time after being sober. And then, 7 or 8 years into sobriety, we had been doing the band for a while, and I was finding myself just so debilitatingly anxious. And I would get so anxious that I would wake up and be burnt out and depressed from that. And it was kind of a cycle that was getting worse. And so I actually went through the process of like going back to start therapy and start looking into medication. And it was definitely hard and scary, especially not depending on any substance for so long and having that kind of history, but getting like an accurate diagnosis and like understanding like what the medication was supposed to do and how I have a lot more self-awareness. I felt better going through the process for sure. And even then I did have some rough side effects, which is kind of what I wrote the song, because I was having a really hard time sleeping. And it was just like my brain feels better, but my body feels like shit. Like, why is this happening? And that's kind of where the frustration of that song came. I'm happy to say now I'm on a steady medication that is like a game changer for me. I thought that everyone just had this like level of anxiety underlying all the time, and like being on a medication that like turned it down. I was like, I can have so much more fun now, So I think I don't think it's right for everybody, but I think it's worth trying if you're open to it for sure.
I love that you talk about the actual process of getting on medication and getting like the right diagnosis. Because I don't think that's something that's talked about enough, is that it sometimes is not this easy transition to taking a pill. It's this magic pill. Like sometimes you get a medication prescribed and it absolutely wreaks havoc on you. And then you get the right medication and everything is so much better. Like there's such no, people aren't talking about that nearly enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then like, with the therapy aspect too, I thought that was really interesting and like really timely and relevant, especially like in a post-COVID world where, so many things shifted to like, obviously like online counseling and whatnot. And then, during the pandemic, access to mental health care was quite slim, because there was such an influx of people reaching out and needing it.
Yeah.
There was too much demand. And I think that's really, commendable that, you're also like highlighting that as well too. And, I think it is kind of interesting, like bringing up like therapy and like showing like the BetterHelp thing and be like, all right, our session's done. Like next week,
Right. I was so excited about that. Our video director, Chase Warren, he's like 22. He's going to be huge. He's like doing all these, he was just on the Magnolia Park tour and stuff. He's killing it. But, we were filming just the video and I sang that line in the song and he came up with the idea on the day of that shoot. And he's like, hang on, I have an idea. We're going to shoot it later. Just do a whip pan right here and I'll tell you later. And so that was like completely his idea. And it came from my lyric, but I was just so excited at like, it was so serendipitous how it worked out. And it was just like, cause he had been saying he wanted to do like a fake ad to see if like he could trick people into like clicking skip ad. And sure enough worked. Super funny. So.
No, that's so creative.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing about your guys' band in general is your content is so original too. Like I just even seeing what you put out today, you're like adult contemporary emo. It's incredible.
Oh man, I'm trying to find my place in the TikTok realm. It's a weird place, It does help. Like it gets our music to new people. So I'm all about it.
Isn't that so wild? Like, I mean, it sounds like you started this project around like 2012, and, I graduated high school in 2012 and I remember, Instagram was barely even a thing yet, and it's so crazy. Like, I'm sure like you've seen such a shift over just even the last decade where it's like, it used to just be like, yeah, you put out some great songs and, eventually then, you go on tour and whatnot. But now it's like a band has to be like a full-fledged, marketing firm. Like now.
Yeah, it's wild. It's
so wild.
And it's definitely like being a band through like all the big social media changes has been so different. It's like, first it was like the Facebook events were such a big deal for shows. And now it's like people don't even make them anymore because people don't look at Facebook. It's like, that's just one example. But it's like, so where are we supposed to advertise our shows now?
That's such a funny thing. I've not thought about Facebook event invites in so long because it used to.
I know.
I used to play like when I would play in bands in high school. We would make like Facebook events, and like you would see like 200 people RSVP'd, and you would be like, "Oh shit, 200 people are going to be at this show." But then it wasn't like RSVP'd on Facebook. Oh man, I miss those days. That was incredible. How did you sort of like learn like to sort of like get that marketing aspect behind your art and your band? Like how did you sort of dive into that?
I guess I've just kind of always been like a do whatever it takes to keep doing this thing and just kind of following by example. And also like I grew up, my dad, he works in advertising. He used to own an advertising agency. So I was always taught presentation is everything, make everything look good. So I've always kind of had that kind of like marketing mindset, and it's a lot more different when it's like you as a person. So I think for me, it's just important to be as much myself as I can. Like, this is what you're going to get on stage. I'm kind of awkward. I make weird dad jokes sometimes, and I really like coffee, and that's kind of what our social media is.
Absolutely. And obviously, like, being in this band for now over a decade, and also just, being around the scene for quite a long time, What do you sort of make of the scene today?
There's a lot of things that I'm excited about. I am really excited about the diversity in the pop punk scene specifically, because it has been so like male dominated for so long. Like my wife and I went to go see Meet Me at the Altar, and the crowd there was just like so inclusive, and like it just felt like very new, like not like your typical like, I don't know, old school Newfound Glory show or something, you know. And I think there's like a lot of really cool pockets of bands and different kind of scenes and realms. I love the emo rap stuff. I know a lot of older guys don't like it, but like Gucci Highwaters and Lil Lotus, all those guys were like up high on my playlist. I think they're great songwriters, and I think it's kind of punk rock in their own way, because they were making these songs in their laptop in their bedroom, and now they're getting millions of streams and going on tour, and they did it themselves, you know. Yeah, lots of stuff I really like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's kind of weird how much, you know, even back in like 2017 or 2018 when those emo rappers first came out, like it really set the stage, I think, for the next decade going forward, you know. It's sort of the ethos and like the intentionality behind doing things and releasing music just, you know, as much as possible and just being as vulnerable and, you know, candid as possible. I think that's really
totally.
And I wanted to talk about like actually Home Remedy. You know, I saw that you worked with Mike Pepe, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he worked on the Homies in the Hire. I think he did their.
He did, yeah.
What was it like working with Mike Pepe? I mean, I think he's done some really awesome stuff. And
oh man, he's definitely one of my best friends in music. We actually just made another record with him. He did Bad Drugs, and Bad Drugs is on a new record that will be out in the summer. To answer your question about Mike, we met him. He came to a show randomly, I think a house show we were playing in LA, and we instantly clicked. We did a writing session with him, and then we were like, we need to make a record with him. And at the time we didn't have a label at all, so we spent that year pretty much writing and saving money to make it with him. So that was kind of how Home Remedy happened, and we got really close because we were in contact with him the whole time that year, sending him songs, telling him like how close we were to being able to pay for it. And then it really worked out because we ended up signing to Rude from that record. He really fits with our band in the sense that he loves to make rock records, but he loves pop songs. And that's kind of like the balance that I like to fit. So like he was, you know, putting 4 different microphones on these old tube amps, but I'm still like, we're still adding like our pop harmonies and stuff. So it's like this mix I've always wanted to have for sure.
That's so cool. I mean, that right there, I mean, that feels like saves the day. Like what you
totally, yeah.
Like, that's like, not to compare, but like that's like, that's so cool. And like, yeah, you mentioned like a record coming out, you know, and I'm guessing like on Rude Records as well. And I guess before we touch on the new record, you know, Rude Records seems like, you know, they've really kind of built this really cool community. There's a really cool vibe that they're kind of curating there. What's it been like working with Rude?
Yeah. So I got in contact with them through my friend Sunsleeper, who's also on Rude, awesome band from Utah. And we ended up just sending them the record. They really loved it. They sent an offer right away. And we stayed in contact, and I continued to like send him friends and stuff. And so did Mike. Pepe was sending him stuff we were working on. And then we ended up like, Sydney Sprague is a good friend of mine. She sang on our record, and then Mike ended up mixing her record and sending it over to Rude. And then she ended up on Rude. And then our buddies and Hearts Like Lions started a new band called Wilder, which is also on Rude. So it kind of ended up being like, oh, we're on this label, and like our homies are also on it. And it feels like it's felt like that and just grown more. Plus them signing bands that I absolutely love, like The Dangerous Summer. So I'm ecstatic to be with them right now.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love what they're curating with the label. It kind of reminds me of like back when a label really had an identity, where it's like, oh, that's a Rude Records band, you know, or that's a Fueled by Ramen band, it's a Victory band, that's a, you know, whatever.
Totally.
Super cool. The new record, obviously, you mentioned that Bad Drugs is going to be on it, and you know, yeah, what's next with the record?
Oh, so it's a self-titled record. It feels like this is the sound I've been trying to get for 10 fucking years, and I'm so proud of it. We did a lot of collaboration on it. We spent a lot more time writing it. We made it with Mike again. Our old drummer Max rejoined the band, who is just incredible, and he played drums on the record, and you can feel it. It just feels like everything is falling into place. I can say the next single is going to be out on April 21st, and it is featuring Brian Swindle of Have Mercy, and I'm super hyped on it.
Dude, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Like, I love that you mentioned, like, you know, you intentionally are self-titling the record. And I love when a band does that, because I think that is the ultimate statement to make, is when you self-title your record. Because like you just said, this is the sound you've been looking for. So if, you know, if somebody were to be discovering your band, like, this would be the record that you would show them, you think, like the first
I
record?
think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, it just feels like it feels like the good parts of the band over the past 10 years have all come back, and it's all together in this, like, what I've always wanted. And I'm in a really cool spot in my life too, where I can really focus on the band. My amazing wife, we just had a year anniversary, actually sat me down and was like, listen, I have a good job right now, and you have an awesome record, and you're not going to work while you're promoting this record. You're only going to do that. So all our Sundressed fans can thank my wife, Michelle Hedges, for giving me like the shot to really freaking do this.
Shouts out. Wow. That is like, that is like the coolest thing ever. Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's incredible. So yeah, with that being said too, like, now you have this, you know, this time to focus on the record and the band, everything, you know. Obviously the tour is coming up as well. And I think you mentioned this is your first headlining tour. Is that what you said?
It's really like our first run we've done since the pandemic, other than we did like a short West Coast run in April 21st, but we haven't been to the East Coast since 2019.
Wow. So yeah, what are you looking forward to at this tour? Obviously, probably just connecting with all your fans after so much time away.
Totally. I'm really excited because we haven't even played Home Remedy over there at all. So we're doing like focus very much on that record and the new record, plus old bangers. So it feels like a really good set. And really excited to play the new songs. The bands we're touring with are really cool too. We're co-headlining with Telltale from Richmond. And then we have this band called Diva Bleach from here opening for half of the tour. They're going to be the biggest band in the world. They're so freaking cool. So really excited. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is there like a city you're looking forward to the most to playing in this run?
We're headlining at Chain, and we've never done that. So I'm very excited about that.
That's a defining moment right there.
It is, for sure.
I grew up like seeing like every video of like bands playing at Chain, like
exactly, yeah. But yeah, we've played there before. We've never headlined, so I'm excited.
Dude, that's amazing. Well, I'll have to make it down to the show when you guys play there.
Yeah, and I'll have to show you the record too. I'm surprised Veronica didn't send it yet, but I guess maybe we're not doing press on the album yet. I don't know.
Well, we'll make sure to give it a ton of love, and yeah, man, I'm sure we'll hopefully get to do some more cool stuff together, man. That's awesome, dude. Well, just, you know, thank you so much for jumping on, and, you know, that's all my questions. And, you know,
oh, dude, thanks for having me. This was great.
Of course, man. Yeah, just very exciting.
I look forward to checking out some episodes of your podcast. I saw you had Joe from Transit on it recently.
Yeah. Joe's the homie. He's the best.
Yeah. Transit is my wife and I's probably favorite band. So,
dude, they're my favorite band.
No way, that's sick.
No, dude. Well, just thank you so much for jumping on, and I just hope you have a great rest of your day, and just, you know, congrats on everything, and super stoked to hear the record and see you guys live.
Right on, man. Have a good one.
Yeah.
See ya.
There you have it. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, family, and enemies. Additionally, feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast. It goes a long way, and it helps us keep the show rolling. You can follow us on Instagram at EMOlition Derby to stay up to date on upcoming episodes, Q&As, exclusive content, and more. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.